Imagine a company that is the sole producer of something so vital that without its service, an entire industry would simply stagnate. Well, since 2018, Dutch company ASML has found themselves in this exact position and are now at the center of a technology cold war between China and the United States. So what exactly is so important about ASML? Well, their business revolves around manufacturing lithography machines, which are used to make computer chips. It's arguably the most important machine in the entire computer chip manufacturing process, since it determines how much detail you can pack into the silicon. To explain it a bit better, lithography machines work by using ultraviolet lights to beam design patterns onto thin silicon plates called wafers, and computer chips are then created from them. There's basically two main lithography machines to do this: deep ultraviolet, or DUV for short, and extreme ultraviolet, or EUV for short. The difference between these two is the resolution of the patterns they can put on the wafers. EUV is much stronger than DUV. It's next generation. In fact, it's arguably more than just a generation advanced. Current EUV lithography machines utilize wavelengths more than 14 times shorter than DUV ones, allowing it to create much more intricate patterns on the wafers, making much smaller, faster, and more powerful computer chips. Now, this is where ASML's dominance comes into play. You see, ASML has an insane 90% market share of the entire lithography industry, but there are still other players in it, such as Canon and Nikon. But it's when we get to the extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, though, where no one can rival them. It's not that ASML is just dominating this industry as well, but rather they are the industry itself. They are literally the only company on Earth right now of creating EUV machines. And this obviously creates a huge geopolitical problem. But how did they find themselves in this situation in the first place? Well, simply put, they bet on themselves while no other company was attempting it, investing heavily in the idea that extreme ultraviolet lithography was the future of the industry. It was an international effort with a supply chain that spanned almost 800 companies, all dotted across the world. It took more than 20 years to create, having begun research and development in the 90s and only being production ready in 2016. But it obviously paid off big time, as you can see here that it's continuously making up a bigger share of their revenue. Not to mention they're selling each new machine now for $150 million. But ASML's dominance in the DUV and EUV market is both a blessing and a curse for the Dutch company, as it's now in the middle of a geopolitical battle between China and the US. Let me explain. In 2015, China unveiled its Made in China 2025 initiative. The main goal of it is to heavily increase the self-reliance of Chinese technology by localizing the industry needed to produce everything they would need, including its design and manufacturing. By doing so, they wouldn't have to deal with foreign suppliers, which is crucial given their isolationist policies and lack of strong allies. At the very core of this initiative is the development of Chinese microchip technology, given how powerful they are and will be in the future. They're used in almost every piece of technology, from phones to electric cars to medical equipment and to, of course, military technologies like hypersonic missiles. Microchips are also the foundation for next-generation technology, from self-driving cars and 5G internet to cloud services and artificial intelligence. They've basically become the new arms race between the East and West because they're so critical to our lives today. Of course, this means that any country without stable access to large amounts of these chips risk falling behind technologically. This is where the US comes in, as that is exactly what they hope to do to China: deny them the ability to produce top-of-the-line silicon microchips. It started in 2018 when Washington had learned about a deal that ASML had made with SMIC, China's main computer chip fabricator, to sell them EUV machines. Washington lobbied the Dutch government to rescind the export license granted to ASML on grounds that the technology will likely be used within the Chinese military, presenting a national security threat to America and the West as a whole. Despite initial resistance, Amsterdam was convinced of the threat posed by China's attempts at modernizing their chip fabrication, and since then, 0 EUV machines have been shipped, let alone installed, in China. And since ASML is the only company on Earth that produces EUV machines, there are literally 0 alternatives for SMIC, presenting a huge barrier to Chinese competition in the chip market. Even being propped up by the government, it's unlikely that any Chinese companies will be able to recreate this technology within the next 10 to 15 years. EUV machines are among the most complicated and precise systems ever engineered by humanity. Even if Chinese engineers had access to all of the 800 unique parts as well as the blueprints to construct them, they would still lack the specialized engineering required to turn theory into a machine that takes decades to develop. And even then, it'd just be to get access to technology that the West will have already had for a long time. So these policies leave China firmly in the dust when it comes to computer chip innovation. Things get tricky, however, when it comes to the DUV machines. Basically, Washington has also been trying to prohibit ASML from selling them as well, which is in opposition not only to ASML, but the Netherlands as well. In their eyes, while it makes sense to prohibit the sale of EU machines to China, given it's the most advanced piece of technology, the DUV machines shouldn't be. They say it's hypocritical, because the US is able to sell their advanced chip-making equipment to Chinese customers, while ASML is only able to sell their older ones that aren't even their most advanced. Not to mention that it's common knowledge that chip technology for purely military applications is usually 10 to 15 years old anyways, at least according to ASML's CEO, Peter Wenick. So it shouldn't be a concern of national security in that regard. Keep in mind too that 15% of ASML's sales are from China, so it's quite a big loss. The Netherlands has also said that it will defend its economic interests when it comes to the sale of chip equipment to China, and they'll make their own decision. Well, they're saying this, but the truth is America is so powerful that they don't really have a choice. New US sanctions mean that even if they can't directly ban ASML from selling DUV machines, they can still restrict them, or any company really, from supplying Chinese organizations with any technology that has been developed or manufactured using an American company. And the thing is, many stages of the production process, spanning chip design, research, development, manufacturing, and testing, depend on technologies that originated in the US. These sanctions are huge, going beyond just quashing China's ability to produce modern chips, but completely denying China as a market to the biggest tech corporations. Also, even though China makes up 15% of ASML's sales, the US makes up around 25 to 30%, meaning they're much more important. This isn't just limited to the Netherlands' ASML though. Japan's Tokyo Electron Limited, which is a large semiconductor manufacturing equipment company, is under the same restrictions. Collectively, these three countries make up 90% of the global supply for these essential machines. If they're all in unity, then China is in deep trouble. So, what has Beijing said about all of this? Well, besides investing billions into their own industry to combat restrictions, they filed a complaint against the US with the World Trade Organization, saying the US is abusing its export controls and is threatening the stability of the global industrial supply chains. Of course though, this fight over microchips is just a proxy for a wider geopolitical confrontation between an old and a new superpower. The US intensely using its influence in this reflects the belief that China is catching up too fast for comfort, so the ban will widen what had been a rapidly closing gap between them and Chinese technology by more than a decade. Is it worth it though, is what remains the question. These measures will cost the global industry nearly $10 billion over the next 3 years because of lost sales of goods and services to China, and prices will be raised for all sorts of chips. Also, if China is forced to independently produce everything, and they eventually succeed, which they have a good chance of doing, that'll basically cut off a lot of Western companies from the second largest economy in the world in this sector, not only losing tons of money in the long term, but also it makes export control measures less effective over time. The entire situation remains a thorn in US-Netherlands relations, but what is clear is the US absolutely does not want China to have ASML technology under any circumstances, and will do anything to make sure it doesn't. Thank you for watching.